Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be doing a Disney debate this time. Are all official Disney princesses bad role models? So there are 12 Disney princesses, which are Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, Ariel, Belle, Jasmine, Pocahontas, Mulan, Tiana, Rapunzel, Merida, and Moana. We have split this debate into two parts. So there is part one, which will focus on the first six princesses, so from Snow White to Jasmine. And there are timestamps in the description box below so you can see each princess like specified. For this debate, Grace is going to be arguing that all Disney princesses are bad role models, and Ellie and Emily are going to be arguing that they are not all bad role models, but there are a mix. So let's get started. First of all, we have Snow White, so let the battle commence.
Okay, so as much as I do appreciate Snow White and how great a film it was, there is a bit of slight issues I think everyone noticed. Now, in the film, we understand that she is a 14-year-old girl who went into a stranger's house, no idea what to do. She just slept in it without permission, and she decided to stay there with 7 old men. That's not right. If you think about it, having a child with 7 strangers.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's what makes her a bad role model. That the fact that she went into a stranger's house, and then she takes food from strangers. She took food from the evil queen. Like, why would you do that? She invited a stranger into the house as well. Even though Doc told her, beware of strangers, she still did it. But she is also a good role model. She does show that there is goodness in everyone if you look hard enough. So the huntsman is like sent to kill her by the queen. And he sees her and he's like about to kill her. But then he sees her kind nature with the animals. And then he's like, hold on, I can't do this. There's goodness in her. So she shows us that there is goodness in everybody, and we should show that, you know? She also asks for help. So that part where she's like lost in the forest and, you know, she was like running away from the huntsman. She shows that, you know, it's actually okay to ask for help. You know, something that actually I think everybody should think about. Another way is that the whole issue that the evil queen had with Snow White was that she was the fairest of them all. But what Snow White shows is that even though she might be the fairest of them all, it's not what the outside like matters, it's what's inside. So she kind of shows that, you know, you should think about not just what's on the outside, but what's on everybody's inside as well, and just see them for that kind of person.
Like you said, she also shows like mistrust. She didn't even know the dwarf, and she still decided to stay there over one night. I mean, they could have been psychopaths for all we know. And also, one thing that does annoy me, you can't just say you fell in love with someone in 1 second. Because here's a few things. For the prince, she doesn't know his name, she doesn't know where he came from, and she doesn't know how old he is. What does that say to kids?
And that is why I think she's a mix. That's why I think she's also a good and a bad role model. I'm not saying that she's completely good, because that would be a lie, because I can see that there are bad points, but I can see that there's a mix, that she's both. Maybe she is actually more bad, but there are some positive messages from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
But then she also expects her Prince Charming to come and always rescue her. Like, after that first moment she met, doesn't know who the hell he is, and then she just suddenly expects that they're going to have a happily ever after, or that he's always going to come to her rescue. That just tell kids never to depend on yourself, depend on others to help you. She ate the poison apple, that was her mistake, but the dwarves tried to help her. The prince saved her. What did she do to herself? No, nothing. She's the one that got herself into this mess.
It does show that kids, it's not a bad thing to ask for help, and like you can get help from other people. Don't bear it all on your own, but at the same time, don't eat food that strangers give you, you know. If some old woman comes up to you with a basket of fruit and she's like, here, eat this apple.
So how naive was she to believe that it was a wishing apple, whatever?
I mean, she was 14. She's still a kid. She's grown 14. Up in a royal environment. She's been very protected from her surroundings, so she is going to be naive.
Yes, but should we just be focusing on the bad points on why she's a bad role model when there is like good points as well? I feel like we should be like learning from the bad stuff and going, you know, actually
Okay,
this is
what's
not
the good
okay.
stuff
What
of
not
trusting
to
her?
do.
Okay, what's the
Yeah.
good stuff of trusting a witch where she was been told not to let strangers in? She ignored that. Not to say
And
don't
then
do
it
it,
shows us
she
the
ignored that.
consequences of what happens if you do that. So kids will learn not to do that. They won't let strangers in because they've seen what happens when you do.
We want next is Cinderella.
Okay, so what we learned from the classic, when she was 10, she was raised by her father. He got married to Lady Tremaine, who also had 2 daughters of her own. A few days later, he died. Cinderella, at 10, was raised by an evil stepmother, like abused, not physically, but like psychologically. And all that time, she was 19, so like 9 or 10 years later. And all that time, she never had the thought of stood up for herself, but she didn't. Instead, she was her maid and made friends with little tiny mice.
I agree, and I think that's a very fair point. But you know, I can't say, you know, that there's anything positive in that at all, because it is true. She should have spoken up, but it wouldn't have been easy. If I was in her shoes, I don't know if I would have been able to, because if she maybe spoke up, maybe she'd be punished, maybe she'd be kicked out, and there'd be nothing, because she literally had nothing. She was so young, and then to go through that from such a young age, and then you know you get used to it. I'm not saying getting used to it is a good thing, but you know, during time, like with time, you just, you know, you just accept it. But I have to say that, you know, her hard work and stuff, it actually paid off, because we see that her evil stepmother and her stepsisters end up with nothing. But with all the hard work she put in, even though she didn't want to do it, she still, you know, got her happily ever after, which she deserved. I honestly think that, you know, she was actually looking for the goodness in them. She still thought that, you know, one day they would actually act like her family. I don't think she ever saw them, you know, she always treated them with respect and everything. I think she still saw and thought that, you know, they'd turn around and they'd, you know, come around and respect her.
Next up is Aurora.
All right. First problem. She only has 18 lines in the entire film. She's the main character. Her name is in the title. But is she like best character? No, because there's nothing about her. There is nothing interesting. If you can list me her ambitions or what she really does in the film, besides sleeping, because that's all she does, then I can probably list her as a really interesting character, but there's nothing.
Well, one of the only things I could think of was that, you know, life and growing up has risks. So her risk was, you know, growing up and then, you know, the sleeping curse, touching the spinning wheel. So it can show us that, you know, us, like, we all go through, you know, stages when we are going to have to go through some risks, and that's just a fundamental thing of life. That's the only thing. But I can't say that there is much more. I mean, yeah, I can't say that she's really a good role model. I can say though that the fairies are a good role model, but we're focusing on the princesses.
So the film should mainly be about them, like the 3 good fairies facing the big bad dragon or something, not Sleeping Beauty. And one thing that does bug me is that she fell in love with a guy who she thought she remembers in a dream.
But then I guess that is the point when, you know, parents would go in and they would go, you know, this is not right.
Stranger danger.
Which is literally the whole couple of
That's the whole thing with these films, like Stranger Danger.
It really is,
which
like,
is
especially with like the oldest ones. It really is like, all, hey, you just met this man and marry him. Let's take the words of Elsa. You can't marry a man you just met. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's listen to the new princesses.
So she's not really the most active princess in the entire.
Next up is Ariel.
So I do like her. She's like a free spirit teenager who I kind of appreciate. But the thing I didn't quite, I don't know. She just seemed a bit spoiled. for me in a way. Like, she thinks she could just do anything. And the fact is, she doesn't quite appreciate or respect her family in some ways. Like, they were doing a musical rehearsal and she missed it. And she probably knew how much it meant for her father and Sebastian. And that just kind of shows how, like, she's not very that caring, if you know what I mean. And I know there's like a huge argument saying like how Triton is so overprotective, but he's still trying to be like a good father at the way. And I don't think Ariel kind of respects that. She doesn't respect how he's trying to keep her safe, not trying to look her up, but like trying to tell her how she's risking her life in some ways at a young age, and he doesn't want to lose her, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and actually I've got down here that both of them, King Triton and Ariel, I think we see a lot of similar traits between both of them. We can see that they're both impulsive. You know, Triton like destroying her collection, and then Ariel settling with the deal with Ursula. Like that was very impulsive. She didn't even think about it. She just signed it straight away. And then we also see that they they don't communicate properly with each other. They don't listen. You know, he's trying to protect her because he knows that, you know, something happened to her mum, and, you know, he doesn't want that to happen to his own daughter. But she doesn't understand that, or maybe she doesn't know. I'm not really sure what was going on then. But, you know, and then she never, you know, really said much about her curiosity about the world. She only collected all of that stuff, and then he found it, and then, you know, the huge argument happened, and then, you know, drove both of them apart. So, you know, I think those are two bad role model points, but at the same time, you know, we could take those and take them into a teaching point, which is like, you know, don't be impulsive, think about what you're going to do, like weigh up the pros and cons. Is that a good idea? Is that not? But saying that, you know, sometimes being impulsive is probably a good thing, because, you know, sometimes having that choice, like too many choices, sometimes, you know, you make the bad decision. So, you know, it's just about, you know, thinking and just thinking about the situation, you know, like listening, that, you know, the importance of listening and, you know, communicating with each other. So respecting what other people are saying and seeing their point of view, but then, you know, also going and saying what you think, you know. So I think those are like teaching points as well. Like, so they did make her a bad role model, but it's up to maybe kids who are old enough to actually understand, you know, those are bad points, but, you know, we can think about it and, you know, make it better.
Kids can relate to her more because she is being a normal teenager. She's going out, she's disobeying her parents, and as bad as that is, at the end, it's a good story. She ends up on good terms with her dad, and it turns out okay on the end. But kids can relate to her more because she's not just cooking and cleaning. She's actually going out and going on adventures and living her life as well as she can, even under like her dad's protective ruling.
But when she went to the Sea Witch, there's a deleted scene from the film where it kind of explains that Ariel knew her, like she knew who Ursula was, what she does. She knows she's an evil witch. So all of that, she has that information. She still went for her help. That's like going to a criminal and asking, "Oh, can you help me kill someone?" And like, yeah, I'll help you.
Oh yeah.
When she noticed Prince Eric, she says she's in love with him. Like, she barely knew him, but she gave up her tail, her voice, her life in the ocean, her family. It's just kind of irritating in a way, like how she gives a message to girls, like, if you got a crush on someone, make sure you get their attention no matter what. Give up everything you have just so you can be with them.
Yeah.
And
you're right. She does give up her entire life for a guy she never really even talked to.
She didn't even meet him. She saw him on the boat. He didn't even see her. He only heard her voice, and that was it.
And it was like so quick. She gives it up.
Yeah.
So they get together, and then she just goes, "Oh, whoop, I'm living on land." Like, hold on, you got
All right,
time.
then.
No need to rush. But yeah, I
Very
mean,
good point.
even though I do think she is probably the worst role model out of all of the princesses, there are some good things, so she still had that, that confidence, to look into and research something new. She was really curious, and
I respect
I
that.
think
I
and I
really respect that.
and I think that's actually a really good message. We if we're curious, we shouldn't just give up. We should keep on looking. We should keep on researching.
Time for Belle.
One of her favorite classics, but something I picked up is Belle doing her first appearance on screen, and when she was breaking into a song, the first thing we hear about her is that she's disgusting where she lives and people live there. She also feels like she's stuck, and she's born in a little town where people doing nothing but doing their jobs every day. But just to let you know, Belle doesn't have a job, and she says she does nothing with her time, and she feels like she doesn't really communicate with these villagers. She said like they think she's odd because she reads books, but I think they think she's odd because she doesn't really talk to them. Like she complains about them, how they don't really engage with her about when she's reading book or when she's telling them a story. They're just doing their jobs, and she feels like she has no one to talk to. But truthfully, she doesn't really try in the film. Like she goes on, like in one scene, she talks to a baker and he interrupts her saying like to someone about like doing the business, and then she just walks away feeling like, okay, he doesn't want to talk. So if someone just ignores her just for 1 second, just because they're doing their job, she feels like he's not engaged. But she's not really trying. She just walks up alone. So I just feel like Belle isn't really the type of person who's very engaging to people. It's not the town is the problem. I think it's kind of her in a way. Like she kind of looks down on the villagers because they don't have the same thing in common. Like they're not very interested in books like her. I'm saying that she shouldn't be interested. I mean, it's great that she reads, but she kind of feel like she thinks that they look at her weirdly because she reads books, but that's not it. She just thinks that they are the weird ones because they're not very engaging. But it's truth. She's the one that doesn't really engage much with them. If you know.
I agree. I think that song, that the Belle song, I think is quite kind of a bit rude. Some of the stuff she says. She says she goes around town and she, everybody's busy working. They've got to provide for themselves. They've got to provide for their families. And she acted like she was above them because she could read. But we've got to remember that in that time, like the majority of people just couldn't read. They were illiterate. Reading wasn't
especially women.
Yeah, it wasn't what they focused on. They focused on making a living and everything. So I mean, what I was thinking is that she could have taught someone how to read. They would have had something to bond about.
Exactly. That's what they did in the live action one. That's what I kind of liked in that. Like she was teaching a young girl, sending her a message, like repeating her knowledge.
So we see that, true love is when you're willing to sacrifice yourself for another. So, Belle sacrifices her freedom to take her father's place as the beast's prisoner her father could be like set free. And then the beast sacrifices his happiness and lets Belle go to take care of her father. So, the whole thing was basically, sacrificing. And, what we can see is that, sometimes,
Showing that love is sacrifice.
Yeah, sometimes you might need to sacrifice something, but at the end of the day, something else might pop up and it'll make you more happier. Maybe, I guess probably one of the best messages is that she does find the beast rude and he was spoiled and he's got a temper and everything, but she sees what's inside and she sees that that's what counts. She takes the time and patience and she has that open mind to actually discover who he was. That whole point, where he couldn't use his cutlery, she kind of she accepts him. She's like, don't worry about it, even though he was trying to make an effort for her. So, just seeing, what's inside of other people, which I think is something that's kind of a common theme among the Disney films.
if you say you love someone, at that point you're gonna have to feel a bit attractive to your partner in a way.
Oh no, this is when it gets into all the bestiality and everything.
Yeah. Belle falls in love with a beast. There is a word for that. It's bestiality.
So, guys, time for Jasmine.
She doesn't want to get married. She just want to be sold off. I respect that. I don't. She literally said there was. She's not a prize to be won. That's my girl. I respect that. But the thing people need to remember about Jasmine is that she hasn't gone out, and she doesn't really interact with people. And I understand that because she hasn't met anyone. But when she left the palace, she didn't really have a escape plan or a plan at all. She just went out and thought she could do what she wants. For example, in the market, when she took that apple for a boy and the seller said you have to pay for that, she said pay, like she didn't understand the word or what it meant. So that could prove that she doesn't really understand the knowledge of the outside world, which could let her risking her own life if she doesn't understand anything at all about what to do in her new life and a new adventure.
Her fault. Like, she wasn't taught that in the palace. In the palace, they don't talk about their kingdom a lot. They cut it out. She hasn't been taught and raised like that to like know what happens on the outside world. So that wasn't her doing. And it shows that she did want to know about that because she did go out to explore it.
But then at the end of the film, where Aladdin finally reveals himself, that he isn't Prince Ali, he's just ordinary Aladdin. But then Jasmine still wants to be with him. She still wants to date someone who has been pretending to be someone else. Because in the real world, that's called catfishing on social media.
True, very true. I'll give you that.
So if I'm talking to someone on social media, they say who they are, if they lied, and then I find out the real truth, I still want to date them, even though they've been lying to me the whole time. I mean, that's a bit naive.
He lied about his position. He didn't lie about himself as a person. He was still who he was trying to be. Different in personality wise, he was just lying about his position so he could actually be with her.
And that's how she met him. She knew him first as a street rat. She didn't know him as Prince Ali in the beginning, so she did know who he was. And at the end, he was revealed that it was the person that she knew. So it wasn't a complete stranger that was like hiding behind like the crown and stuff. And at the beginning, she pretends to be a part, just like a common person to the market. And she pretends to be just an average person. But he pretty quickly realizes that she doesn't belong
So
there.
she says, I'm not a prize to be won. So I don't know, it kind of makes me think that she feels like she doesn't have enough self-worth or value, you know, because I think we should all think that we are a prize, you know, we are something precious, you know, like
I think
you say
that quote is more not the fact that she devalues herself, but more on the side of I'm not a prize to be won by men. What's the word? I don't know.
Like she feels like a trophy or like
she's meant to be a trophy wife. He's parading her around to all these other kingdoms like princes and stuff to basically be won by the highest bidder.
I think she was like kind of a bit spoiled as well. Like her father just wants, you know, to look after her, to make sure that she's protected. And we got to remember, this is not even set in somewhere like Europe or anything. This is set like in the Middle East. So it's different background and stuff. So from that point, you know, like arranged marriages was things, making sure that the daughter was always looked after. Those were like things that were, you know, were really common then. And he just literally wanted to do that. But she didn't even take the time to like even know the princess or anything. She straight up just said no. Like, okay, sure, say that, but you know, give them a chance at least, you know. And I think that's probably a good point, good teaching point, you know. Give people a chance before you judge them.
She's good. She shows that women can be strong, not to follow the stereotypes that they were given, you know, that women are equal, not to be sold off and everything. She's a good role model for younger girls.
That's it for part 1, but make sure to stick around for part 2, which will be a continuation of the remaining Disney princesses. Let us know in the comments which official Disney princesses are bad role models, or are all of them bad role models. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with our content. See you next time for part 2. Bye.
Bye.